Hello everyone in COMM8400. This is a self-directed lesson. We'll talk about word choice, how to find and choose words that are most effective in business writing, semi-formal kind of situation. So I'm going to share screen here. I'll work through and use the PowerPoint with some examples. This takes practice to do. There's no way, you don't just learn this. This takes the practice, and it's challenging to find the right words sometimes. And oftentimes it takes 2 or 3 looks at something to find the words you wish to use. But every time you do something, it helps your brain make the change and you work towards it. Word choice. In this case, translations, words between languages. Languages are structured differently. And for example, this one here, it says slip down and fall carefully. That may be precisely what the translation is from the symbolic letters that are language above, but it doesn't fit in the construct of English. And I look at the end. Do not disturb. Tiny grass is dreaming. Oh, that's actually, I kind of like that, but I wonder what the actual symbolic language above was saying. It was probably saying, please take care of, or please avoid walking on this young grass, or something like that. But the translation breaks it up because someone didn't look at it to see how it fits into what's accepted as the culture in the words in English language. It's easy to make fun of translation because translation is fraught with challenges. It is not easy to translate from one language to another. It doesn't go directly. You have to organize concepts and thoughts and then recreate them over here. It is challenging. In general, though, if you're going to be speaking and writing in business communication in North America, think plain language. That's the term you'll hear used. Simple words, short words, familiar words that most people will immediately understand. And don't use lots of long words put together. There's unfortunately a habit that many people I've encountered in North America. They think that they will sound smarter and more authoritative if they use big words that people don't understand, because they think that it elevates them above the people who are reading it. But in my experience, what really happens is people don't even bother. They go someplace else and you're left there by yourself, because they don't like, it also has the feeling of being talked down to. You're being lectured. You're almost being made fun of, because the person up here is using words in the hierarchy, wants to be up here, using big words to show they're better than you. That doesn't play well in North American culture. So think about simple, direct words. Here's a list of some comparisons. Request, just ask. Desire, want. Assist, help. Endeavor, I'll try. Dine, eat, pursue, follow. Commence, or begin. I will admit that in some of these cases of the examples I have here, it doesn't seem like a big change. But if you have a diligent mindset about picking straightforward words, exactly what you want to say, as short a word as you can, with as few syllables, those little pieces that construct a word, the fewer syllables you have, if you have a single syllable word instead of a 2-syllable word, it's easier to say. Request, 2 syllables. Ask has 1. Endeavor, 3 syllables. Endeavor. Oh, there we are. Endeavor. 3 parts to it. It actually takes more energy to say and more energy to think. Try is 1 syllable. You're trying to condense and simplify the language. And to that point, avoid using words where somebody has stitched IZE on the end to kind of make it a verb. Oh, e. They're more difficult to say and they're more difficult to view. I think partly because the Z is an uncommon letter in the English language. It's not used very often, and it tends to, at least in my experience, if I say a word with a Z in it, oh, I notice the Z because it's so unusual. Whereas I wouldn't notice the letter A or a letter I or a letter E or perhaps an N. Those are more common letters in English language. And they tend, you'll find those in contractions a lot because they're easier to say. Someone who's speaking English tends to use those a lot. So instead of finalize, finish, complete. Operationalize, operationalize. That's six syllables. Start, 1 syllable. Maximize, 3 syllables. Increase, 2. Optionalize, optionalize. That's 4 things. It's also an awkward for English. Even native English speakers would have trouble saying that word because of the way it's constructed. In that case, I would actually use 2 words. Allow, choice. It's 2 words, 2 single, or one. Allow has 2 syllables, choice has 1. It's simplified. Even though it's 2 words, it actually simplifies the sentence. Utilize. Well, you're using something. I'm going to prioritize this. Well, I'm going to rank something and put it in order. So whenever you see an IZE on a word, look at it. It's saying, hey, this is a word that you probably want to look at. Think about, why is it here? What word can I use to replace it? And I would say every time you will be able to replace that word with another word that works better. Oh dear. Nouns are words that represent a thing. A system, that's a thing. A house is a thing. A phone is a noun, is a thing. That's how it fits in the English language. However, there is a habit in business writing, especially in North America, to create a word to represent something, but make it big, because I think the person who created it thinks that because it's a big word, people will think it's important. My experience is people just won't read it. So there are some on this screen right now. We have systematization. Wow, that's how you order something. You put it in order. You run something. Desensitization. That makes something tougher. You're taking away how something is responding to a sensation. You're toughening it. Okay, operationalization. You're starting something. Familiarization. Wow. You're making aware. You're educating. Those are easier words to understand. Please avoid long words. Short words are better. Always look for the shortest, most descriptive words you can find. The more you do that, the easier everything you're writing will be. Short, specific, direct words are wonderful. Yeah, word clutter is the term I'm using here. Too many words to describe something. This goes to the idea of, usually there's one word to describe what you're trying to say. And this is there are lots of these clutter words. They clog up sentences. They make it more difficult to read and more difficult to say. And the best filter I can offer to you is, if you are worried about your sentence, read it aloud and see if you can say it without running out of air from your breath, or you don't trip over the words. And if you're running out of air before you get to the period that ends the sentence, or you can't say the words comfortably, change the sentence. Okay, I love some of these. As a matter of fact, actually would be a better word. On the occasion of, when something happens. On a regular basis, regularly. Be of the opinion that, well, I think, or I believe. So always aim for as few words, the most direct words, than the easiest to say words. And doing that will almost immediately make what you're writing sound better and read better. Now, adjectives and adverbs are modifying words in the English language. Adjectives modify a noun. Adverbs modify a verb. So in the first example, he proposed an extraordinarily daring and bold procedure. Just say he proposed a daring procedure. Daring encapsulates bold. He proposed a daring procedure. That's an adjective because it's the procedure is the thing, the procedure is the noun, and he's describing what kind of procedure. Second one, her campaign was an imaginative, original, and creative, and thus highly acclaimed. Just use, in this case, her innovative campaign was highly acclaimed. Highly is the adverb for acclaimed. Although, you know, in a general sense, a really good rule to follow is don't use adjectives and adverbs. Because in my experience, if you have to put a word in front of the word you're choosing to make the word bigger or better, you pick the wrong word. There's enough words in the English language they can usually stand on their own. If you can have one word that takes the place of two, that's your goal. So avoid using the ly words, the adverbs, and the just avoid putting a modifying word in front of another if you can. It just makes your work more powerful, because then the words one at a time are doing the work. And being specific helps. We talked about this already in class. When we're talking about the iPhone reviews or your smartphone reviews. Give us specific information. I'll pick the second example here. Management is concerned that our costing expert be involved in the planning process for the renovation. Okay, who is the planning process? Okay, who cares? Who's the manager, and who is the expert? So in this case, Hugh Willis wants your costing expert, Sheila Moroz, to do estimates for the renovation. So we know Hugh is the manager, Sheila is the expert, we know what they want. Hugh wants Sheila to do the estimates. That makes it easier to understand. So if you can use a name, it helps simplify, because a name stands for something else. A name stands for a person. Management, that could be anybody in a management position in a company. Be as specific as you can. Always talk about something happening to something. Don't talk about how this had this happen to it. Usually if you're talking in an active way, the sentences are shorter, because Think about something happening, not that something has happened. So active, we decided to sell our shares. If you look at the bottom, where it's passive, which is not as effective, it was decided that the shares would be sold. It is grammatically correct, but between the two of those two sentences, we decided to sell our shares, or it was decided that the shares would be sold. My preference in business writing culture is put something into motion. Don't talk about it in the past. So what's preferred is we decided to sell our shares. That shortens the sentence. It's more direct, and it's an action happening. It's easier to write a sentence with something happening. Something did something. This happened next. Like, think about movement in your writing. This is challenging because it's a description. And oftentimes in a sentence, you're trying to describe a complicated thing in as few words as possible. So it's easy then to start putting description in front of description in front of description. So let's take a look at this. This example, employee benefits payroll deduction forms. Wow, it's employee benefits payroll deductions, and it's a form. So it's that form, something you fill out, it's only for employees' benefits for payroll deductions. Okay, so it'd be better to break that up a little bit to make it easier to understand. We're talking about payroll deduction forms for employee benefits. That's extra payments that happen. Think about the other one, plant energy conversion project. I'm not that's yeah, it's a project, but there's 3 words in front of project describing it. I would say start with project to conserve plant energy. It's not quite as active, but it's far more easier to understand because we're talking about the plant, meaning the equipment, to conserve, or project to conserve plant. We know that we're talking about a project that conserves energy in the plant, meaning the factory. In this case, I would even potentially write that to make it even more easy to read. As I look at this, I'm going to put it right here. Project to conserve energy in the plant. It's more words, but it helps clarify what the understanding is. If someone reads that sentence quickly, they could very easily misunderstand what you were saying. So even though the goal is to be specific and use as few words as possible, if when you have too few words, the person who's reading it is likely to not understand, use a couple of more words. And if you're going to do that when you're writing something, write everything out, finish what you're doing, put it aside, come back to it a couple hours later, come back to it the next day, read it again. Your brain will kind of look at it as if it's something new. And oftentimes the challenges in communication will appear to you quite dramatically. Oh, I have to change that. I have to change that, change that. And then set it aside again. Another day, come back again, look at it. Your brain will have looked at it and thought about it and will see other things. It's the iterations that are powerful. Oftentimes in business communication, you don't have time to have 3, 4, 5 days. But here's what a trick I would say. As soon as you have any kind of written report, open a file, start writing something. Write 20 words that come to mind about the report. This is going to be a report about such and such. I have to write about, I have to include this. Just write that like that. No structure. Save it and close it. You've now started that project. and your brain starts working on it in the back of your head. So when you come back to the project again, you start working on it, your brain is already partway ahead because you've already primed your brain. It's something that I used to do a lot when I was writing journalism, daily stories. As soon as I had to write something, I'd write something and then I could go do something else, come back. It was the mixing up that allowed me to write words quicker. Sometimes my deadlines were really close and I couldn't, but if I had a story that would take some more time, I'd try to write something really early before I even interviewed somebody, and then come back, and that would help me know what questions to ask. So there are ways to work around it. Unnecessary jargon, and I would say jargon in general isn't needed. It's very difficult to find necessary jargon. I think I put this in here to make myself laugh. If your person you're speaking to, if the person reading your report is likely to not understand what you're using that word for, use a different word. And the other thing about reports is, it's not just the person you send it to. That person may take the report and send it to somebody else. You won't know who the other person is who reads it. So that means I would say your assumption would be they won't understand any technical terms unless you explain them. So either don't use technical terms or use technical terms and explain what they are. That's key. Assume that someone is not going to understand you and write to meet that need. Here we go. Example, I like my example here. Don't talk to business users about taxonomy and metadata. Use tags or descriptors instead. Those are description words that it's like, oh, I understand that, or they may understand a bit more about it. Yeah, I like this example of jargon. Let's see if I can say this. Should you require clarification regarding new procedures in your department pursuant to recently adopted policy changes, further information can be provided upon request to the director's office. This, I think, sounds better. Please contact Melanie Chan's office if you have any questions about how the new policy will affect your department. It's asking you to do something for this reason and what's happening. You're in action. So that's what I encourage you to do. Now, there is a little activity here about cliches. I'm not going to worry about it here, but what I would like you to do is look at the activity Declutter. I've got it on my large screen off to the side. I apologize, I'm not looking directly towards you now. Make the sentences more forceful. Get rid of cliches and clutter and use personal subjects and precise active verbs. So what I would do is this. The very first one, I'll use an example. I'll do it like this. Sales figures for the month of February. Whoa, what's this? Consistently steady? Whoa. So here's something else. It is to be hoped. Whoa, that's a bit clunky. So how about this? I'm going to put, I hope sales in February there you go. I hope sales in February show consistent improvement. That's what I would do with that, just clarify it down. And you could, and I can wordsmith this as well and keep working away at it, but that shows how much you can focus something down in a sentence. So please work with those. Just go through and experiment. We'll come back and we'll talk about it in class as well. This is a practice thing. Keep doing it, and I'll ask some students to share what they've done, and we'll see what can be improved, because there's anybody's writing, everyone's writing can be improved or changed, because there's no one answer. It depends on the circumstance. So at that note, I'm going to ask you to finish that activity, the declutter activity. We'll talk about it in class. And then I'd like you to move on to there's another one about authority and how to be seen as an authority, how to use emotion and reason and authority to persuade, a persuasion exercise. So that's coming up next. So please work on the declutter activity and then look towards that next video in the course shell. Take a look at with an activity within that. So take care. Bye-bye.